Welcome, everyone. This is Amy Checkwick from the Department of Early Education and Care. Just want to welcome everyone to the kickoff meeting of the Data Advisory Commission. We're so excited to actually be here with all of you today. And we're going to start out with a welcome from Commissioner Kershaw.
Good afternoon, everyone. Very happy to see you all. It's a good week to be in community with the people we care about and are aligned with in our work. So really happy to be here, and thank you all for answering the call to join the advisory committee. This is a important milestone for us. As you all are aware, for the last 2.5 years, we've been really working to build capacity around our data team and our ability to use and communicate with data and make data more transparently available, to use it to inform our work and resources, as well as your work and resources out in the community. We've also been working very hard to sort of update and modernize our IT systems. So right now we do a lot producing data. Sometimes it's pretty hard manual work, and sometimes it's outdated or point in time or survey data versus real-time data. And so a huge piece of our sort of research and data strategy is also modernizing our IT systems. So, and Jesse Murray, who is our Chief Product Officer, is here as part of our work. And so the strong integration across our product and IT worlds with our data and analytics team, not to mention our finance and fiscal teams as well. But I want to start really by just recognizing our brand new division. Many of you have probably heard recently there's a promotion at the agency. So we have a new deputy commissioner for research, policy, and strategy with Amy Checkaway, both recognizing her incredible leadership and contribution to the agency, but also the importance and elevation of sort of the research and data analytics piece of our work, and how important it is that it's integrated with our policy work. As well as our overall strategy work across the agency. And Amy has built an incredibly talented team. All of you have met Ashley White, who we are so fortunate to have at EDC, and Adrienne Murphy and their teams, who've been really leading our data analytics and research work. I know there's a research summit yesterday that I got a lot of positive and strong feedback about both the work we're doing, but how much excitement there is kind of statewide about early education and childcare research and its importance for sort of driving change and transformation in the field. So you're going to hear about a lot of the work we've done. You started to see it. You know, I think when I first got back to EEC, we were really struggling to be able to produce some data around what we were doing on a daily basis, what our operations were, to look out at the horizon on what we might want to do. And now we've come a really far way. We have key performance indicators, dashboards that are posted online. We are using data to drive changes in our C3 program, to better understand the families that are being served through our child care financial assistance, to understand capacity needs and changes and shifts in the field, qualitative and quantitative data and research. And a big piece of all of that is obviously engaging with those who are doing the work in the field, who are driving research and change, who are thinking about the needs of the business community, or our out-of-school time and after-school time, after-school providers, as well as our early educators, as we think about expanded access to preschool. So really exciting milestone for us today to have this advisory group begin meeting and to engage with us in partnership around our commitment to create a really truly data-informed, evidence-based set of strategies, policies, procedures, sometimes regulations, and practices in the way we do our work, and to be able to communicate that on a regular basis, not just through monthly board meetings, which is sort of what we were relying on for the first couple of years. So I am incredibly grateful and proud of the progress the agency has made in becoming data informed and sharing that information, And I'm really excited for the next steps in this journey, which will be done in partnership with all of you. So thank you again so much for being here and for partnering with us in this work. And now I'm excited to turn it back to our new Deputy Commissioner. Deputy Commissioner Checkaway, take it away.
Thank you, Commissioner. Much appreciated. And we thought it would be important to take a few minutes before we dive into our formal agenda for commission members to have a chance to introduce yourselves to each other, for those of you who don't know each other, but also to sort of ground us in the work of the commission ahead. And so our suggestion would be that I can call on folks in a certain order, just to keep things organized on Zoom. But we're hoping that for commission members, everyone can share your name, your role and organization, and then a data point that has recently made a difference in your organization or to those you serve. You can get creative on this if you want, but a data point or a piece of information that's top of mind right now, that's something that has made a difference or that you find useful. And I'm going to put that in the chat as well. And starting with Victoria, I'm going to go from alphabetical order by first name backwards. We'll see if I can manage this.
That was fun. Hi everybody, Victoria Bergeron. I am a policy researcher at the Massachusetts Taxpayers Foundation. And so it was name, role, and the data point. The first thing that popped to mind, I'm working on some stuff around the early educator pipeline and looking at the growth of FCC programs in recent years was something that has stuck out to me recently that I'm hoping to dig more into. So, nice to be here.
Thanks, Victoria. Over to you, Patrick.
Hello, everyone. Patrick Stanton. I'm the Executive Director of the Massachusetts After School Partnership. I think one piece of data that we often look for, trying to explore, is just finding the broader scope of after-school programs that are available. And that is much harder than you think it would be. But when you try to dig into it, it's tough between the schools, licensed programs, and everything in between. So yeah, that's something that I am one day hoping to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Riley.
Hey folks, I'm Mark Riley. I'm the Undersecretary and Chief Operating Officer for the Executive Office of Education. I am part of the commission as the designee of our Secretary, Pat Tutwiler. He was really hopeful to join you all today. As some of you might know, he ended up getting hailed to the Ways and Means Committee. They're doing a fair share SUP hearing today. So he missed it, but he wanted to extend his appreciation to all of you for being a part of this and committing your time and energy to this work. And from our vantage point, I think if I have to pick sort of one data point recently, well, first of all, crediting Commissioner Kershaw and her leadership and vision for making data such a priority of her team. And as you're seeing the team members, and you'll see more today, so much of the work that they've been doing, I could pick any number of things because they've been generating an immense amount of data. But I think where I'll land is the fact that over the past couple of years, in terms of the multitude of investments that we've made, our early ed workforce salaries, their compensation has improved by about 20% or so. We know there's a heck of a lot more to do, but certainly a very encouraging data point that we've been seeing recently, thanks to many folks' hard work. So that's mine for today.
It's a good one. Thanks, Mark. Next on my list is Marissa, who I think just joined. So Marissa, we're just going around and saying name, role, and organization, and a data point that's made a difference recently in your organization or to those you serve that comes to mind. Anything.
Thanks so much, Amy. Hi, everyone. I'm Marissa Fear. I'm the Director of Policy at Strategies for Children. I'm filling in for Titus, who is our Deputy Director, who I believe was named as one of the members of this commission. and data point that has helped my work. I mean, so much of the KPIs, the new dashboard has been something that we've been referencing a lot lately. So being able to point to the number of licensed programs that are in Massachusetts, the number of programs that are participating in C3, the number of children that are in licensed care in Massachusetts. I think all of that has been helpful, and I'm excited to see how you all kind of continue to build out that dashboard as we move forward.
Great, thanks. Laura Perel, you're next.
Okay, so we're heavy on the other letters of the alphabet, I'm guessing.
Yes.
If you're already at Al. Good afternoon, everyone. Laura Peril. I'm with Nurtury Early Education, President and CEO. We have both center-based and programs and a large family childcare network. Data point that matters a lot to us is the wait list and that status and the movement. I also think the data dashboard is incredibly helpful. And I also have a question about childcare deserts, but I'm going to hold that for later.
Excellent. Please do. And bring it back up. Kate, you're next before Elle.
Hi, I'm Kate, President and CEO of Horizons for Homeless Children. Thrilled to be here. Mark stole my number, just gonna say, I always look at the salary numbers and I'm like, yay.
Got you.
I will say that I'd be interested, what I look at here at Horizons, we're data geeks, is the well-being index of my workforce, which I would love to see be something that the EEC folded into what it does. We ask 6 questions. It has to do with whether you can pay your rent, whether you have a second job to pay your rent, whether you have enough money for groceries, all those sorts of things. It boils down to 6 questions, and but it does give you a good insight into the workforce's well-being. I love the dashboard, and I'm excited to be here because we're data geeks, and without data, you don't get answers. So hooray. All this progress is wonderful.
Thank you. Kate Warren Barnes.
Always hard to follow the other Kate B in the space, but I will do my best. Good afternoon, everybody. Kate Warren Barnes, she, her pronouns. I am the head of Massachusetts Strategy and Impact for Jumpstart for Young Children. And I'm going to take the liberty to just say 2 really quick things about data. One, I want to shout out the Center for the Study of Childcare Employment at Berkeley. We are huge fans of them at Jumpstart, and one data point that they have from their most recent 2024 Workforce Index is that the Massachusetts early education workforce is 4.9 times more likely to live in poverty than elementary and middle school teachers in the state. So that is one quantitative data point. But the second thing I want to say is I love qualitative data. So I am really excited to be here in the space to hopefully help amplify the value and importance of qualitative data. So good to see you all. Glad to be here.
Thank you. And now Kate Marie.
I was curious how you're going to do the Kates.
Yeah, I didn't really know.
We're pretty much always together too. So Kate Marie Croft, I'm the CEO of the Alliance of Massachusetts YMCAs. We represent all the Ys in the state. And for us, something that's really been making an impact, especially the last probably 4 months, is just food insecurity in Massachusetts and how much we're using food through CACFP to feed the kids in our program. So knowing that about 20% of people in Massachusetts are now food insecure. And so sometimes this is the only place those kids get that meal. And just highlighting and elevating that because we know that it's under risk right now.
I'm going to move to Jen Aldrich.
Thank you, Amy, and congratulations on your new position. Jen Waldworth, Executive Director of the Massachusetts Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs. So we work with all 40 organizations in the state. I've got a lot of data points because we just had Advocacy Day last week. So I'm going to actually combine a couple into one. And looking at our data this year compared to Massachusetts data, Boys and Girls Clubs versus the general mass data for teens, we're seeing that Black and brown kids, 91 to 99% feel like they have an adult to turn to at clubs. And also feel safe in that they belong to clubs compared to the general population, how they feel in their school and community, which is 53 to 54%. So a very strong programmatic data point for clubs.
I'm going to resist from asking questions. It's like my instinct is like, I want to know more, but I know we're just getting started. So JD.
Hi, everybody. JD Cheslaw. I'm President and CEO of the Massachusetts Business Roundtable. And I was just thinking, I'm also a former board member and chair, I guess, of the Board of Early Education and Care. And I was thinking that we had these conversations back then about data, and clearly so little was done under my leadership that they needed to create a commission to address it. So here we are. I'm happy to be part of this. Data point. So totally unrelated, but it's fresh in my mind because we've been surveying our members about what's happening in DC. And we asked them back in December a series of questions, but the one I'll share now is we asked, do you think some of the policies coming out of DC are going to be good or bad for the Massachusetts economy? So in December, before the inauguration, but after the election, 43% said bad for the economy. And 57% were some sort of a combination of good, don't know yet, no impact. But it was 43% bad. We asked the same question last week, and it was 88% bad. 12% not sure yet. Nobody said good. And it'd be interesting to ask them, like if I asked them today, the 88% probably would be bigger. But it does show the uncertainty and chaos that is hitting every sector of the economy.
Thank you. Next we have Harold and Paula.
Hello, everyone. We are Harold Blanco and Paula Andrea Echeverry, educators and owners of Paula's Barn Childcare in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Yeah, and we also have a community called Eco Latino. It's educators community for family child cares in Spanish. And the data point that I want to bring up, it's with them, with the educators in the Spanish community. It's the we have over 150 in our community, and the amount of them seeking resources in their own language and more simple terms to explain it in Spanish, and trying to get to those resources, trainings, and basically support to navigate all these different systems that we're all involved in the early childhood. It's amazing. So we're glad to be here and be part of this group too.
Glad you're here too. Thank you. Emily.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Dropkin. I'm the Director of Data Planning and Evaluation for Head Start and Early Learning Programs at Community Action Pioneer Valley out in Western Mass. And the number that has been driving a lot of my work for the last 2.5 months, you can guess why that length of time, is that in the fall we had 84 children enrolled whose parents had identified as being part of a refugee or immigrant household when they first enrolled. We don't require that, but families get priority. And we've been thinking a lot about how to ensure those families feel safe and supported in our programs. We had the first family choose to leave the country. They're in the process now. But that number has guided a lot of our attention these last few weeks.
Thank you. Ellen Dickinson.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Ellen Dickinson from United Way of Massachusetts Bay. I oversee research analytics and planning, and I'm here at the request of the Massachusetts Early Education Funders Collaborative. And so I think a number that is top of mind for us, and how thinking about how it relates to the whole childcare sector, is the how much of a family's the median income is spent on childcare. So that, that's a stat that drives a lot of our work as we think about, increased affordability and accessibility of the kinds of care that families want. And that, informs a lot of our planning and our strategy around it. So excited to be here with all of you.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
You too.
I know. so
It's fun.
many faces. Let's see. I knew I was going to lose track at some point. Commissioner, I'm going to skip you, but I am going to come back to you as a commission member, and I'm going to move next to Amaris.
Hi, everyone. Amaris Kinney, Director of Research at Neighborhood Villages, and I'm here on behalf of my colleague, Liz Lewant. And recently we were thinking about potential implications of what's going on at the federal level, and we're interested in knowing about reliance of children on mass health or Medicaid. So I just found a stat that around 800,000 children in Massachusetts rely on Medicaid, including nearly 43,000 children with disabilities. So that has just stuck with me for the last week or so here.
Thank you. Adam Jones.
Hey everyone, I'm Adam Jones. I'm here as a representative of the Common Start Coalition. I'm a policy analyst at the Massachusetts Budget and Policy Center. The data point I want to lift up is, I think it comes from one of the more recent C3 surveys that about 3/4 of providers reported that because of C3, they were able to either offer their own sort of financial assistance or reduce tuition or stave off like a tuition increase. And I just want to lift that up because I think that it just shows the cascading effect of good policy, right? Like a lot of times we're pitting like the workforce against like families or something, but it shows that it's really a collective effort, childcare, and people really want to be supporting families the same way the same way educators want to be supported. And I think that really ties a nice bow on that story.
Mm-hmm. Andrea Howard.
Hi, folks. My name is Andrea Howard. I'm the CEO of the West End House Boys and Girls Club in Alston. And we have been working incredibly hard on instilling and infusing trauma-informed practices throughout our operation for a couple of years now, and our national survey data just showed that we went from 85% to 96% of our young people feeling physically and emotionally safe at the West End House. So that was a really big bump for us, and really proud of that.
Thank you. I think, Commissioner, you are the final person, unless I've missed anyone who I skipped over by mistake or who joined late. Just want to check that first. Please just speak up if you got missed. So I'm going to finish with Commissioner Kershaw.
Okay, and we also have a lot of staff members here and also off. So I don't know if we're going to hit some of them too, or but Amy reminded me actually of the chair of this commission. So, so that's quite an honor, given the esteemed group that's been assembled here. So, and as my team knows, I hate to pick, I hate to be asked to pick a favorite anything, a favorite intervention, a favorite line item, a favorite program. But I'm gonna pick some data, hearing it here for the first time, you all, because we're going to be talking about it at the board meeting next week, is the application data for our family child care capital investment program. So we received 1,685 applications for that first ever family child care capital grant program, representing $36 million in requests. So we are committed to data, whether it's collecting data from programs, data from our systems, but also information about what's happening in the system. And so that is the data, those are data points that we'll be sharing with the board next week that I'm thinking a lot about in terms of the vast need out there for capital investments in our family child care programs. All right, Amy, back to you.
Thank you. Yes. And I think I do want to acknowledge the staff from EEC who are here. I think I'm not going to do the icebreaker question with them, but maybe we can just do a quick run through of the folks who won't be necessarily sort of presenting or sharing information today, so folks have a chance to say hi. I'm going to start with Ellen, who was also really instrumental in helping make this meeting happen and prepare for it. So I'll start with you, Ellen. Just to say hello, say your name and role at EEC, please.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ellen Song. I'm a data policy analyst here at EEC. Very excited to be joining this meeting and glad to continue working with all of you.
Great. And moving to another member of my team, Ashley. Oh, yeah, Ashley, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley White. I'm the research director at EEC.
Great. Chris, want to give you a chance to just say a quick hello, please.
Hi, everybody. Chris Power, Chief of Staff here at EEC. Good to see you all.
All the very important people that make everything go. Over to you, Jocelyn. Speaking of.
Thanks, Amy. Jocelyn Bound, Deputy Commissioner for Workforce Program Supports and Innovation.
And probably everyone knows her, but Eugenia, want to finish with you.
Hi, everyone. Eugenia Soilis, Director of External Engagement.
Great.
And
Great. Well,
I already introduced Jessie, but maybe Jessie,
yes.
just introduce yourself. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. I'm Jessie Murray. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at EEC. So working between the program side and the IT side. Excited to kick off this endeavor with you all.
Thank you. Great. So I think we have a formal agenda and maybe it's no surprise, a slide deck to help facilitate the conversation today. Just before we kick off, wanted to just acknowledge, something I was thinking about as folks were actually sharing the different data points is just recognizing, when we think about data, there's data that EEC collects, folks reference data that other agencies collect that's really important. Also in some of your organizations, the data that you collect to help with your work every day, and also recognizing other organizations, research organizations, national organizations like the center at Berkeley that was referenced, as well as both, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday at the research summit, actually, the importance of both the quantitative data and the qualitative and voices and stories and experiences, and wanting to sort of leverage and lift up all of that to help inform decision-making and planning and resource allocation. So it was really helpful, not only as an icebreaker, but to actually hear all of the things that were said today. So I'm going to start just by talking about the agenda for today's meeting, and then also the formal charge of the Data Advisory Commission, just to orient everyone again. We just did introductions. Again, I'll talk about the charge. Wanted to also express enthusiasm for kicking off this work and recognize that today includes a pretty good amount of time for EEC between me and Adrian, who you'll hear from in a few minutes, as well as Jessie and others, to try to share with you as concisely as possible, some background information and an overview of some of the work that we think may be relevant to the Commission's focus, just to really help ground members in some of what is already happening and what some of the priorities are for the agency moving forward. I think this is more presenting time than we would probably envision in the future. So just wanted to sort of acknowledge that, but we have also intentionally left hopefully what feels like a good amount of time for questions and discussion, both throughout the meeting and also more dedicated time at the end, just to give you a sense of how we're going to spend our time today. We do really hope that you'll ask questions and share ideas throughout the presentation. You can use your hand raising if that works in the Zoom. You can also speak up as well. I don't want to make this too formal, but want to encourage folks to again, contribute. This is really the commission's work. And then we're going to end today with some focus on logistics and next steps for the commission. So what's ahead? So hopefully everyone leaves with a sense of what the year ahead may look like. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you. And we can keep on going. So just acknowledging that the Data Advisory Commission was formed and integrated into the agency's enabling statute through what's called an outside section of our current fiscal year 25 state budget, which again is really exciting. Focus on data. I'm excited about that. It sounds like a lot of you are as well, which is great. We just included the language directly from the charge, just again to ground us moving forward, calling out in the gray box that you see on the left, and I don't usually read things, but I'm going to read it. There shall be a data advisory commission to make recommendations to improve the use of state provider and program level data related to the cost, quality, and utilization of early education and care services. And early education and care, I think we're thinking is broadly the whole system, including our youngest kids as well as school age programs and children as well. And then really focusing on the commission using data from the Department of Early Education and Care, including but not limited to a bunch of data that we'll go through actually today that's specified in another section. So you're not seeing that yet here, but you will soon, which goes into some annual reporting requirements, which the hope is that the department will collect as is feasible. And again, the point of that is really for the commission to identify and make recommendations on high impact and cost effective data strategies for assessing the needs of children and families in 4 main areas. So the first area is focused on making sure the department has a data collection and reporting system to track data. We'll share some more today with you about what we currently have in place there. Strengthening capacity to analyze and report on different data, again, all in the interest of supporting strategic decision making. Strengthening our agency's capacity to use data to inform resource allocation and implementation decisions. And finally, and importantly, streamlining data reporting wherever possible, including if there are reporting requirements that are duplicative that we could consider removing. So again, the stated focus is really on improving data and reporting infrastructure and data systems, improving analytic capacity and data-informed decisions, and streamlining requirements for those who are reporting information to us. Then the charge goes on, and we didn't put this on a slide because it didn't seem necessary to sort of lay out the membership of the commission. All of you are here today. And then if we could go to the next slide just to finish it up because it's a long charge. There's just a reminder, which is something that is obviously important to us and the state as a whole, to include focus on the needs of providers that operate in rural areas of the state when making recommendations. And then just to structure the commission's work, the expectation that the commission will submit an annual report no later than December 1st with findings and recommendations to the legislature to share the progress that's been made during the given year. And of course, we would make that publicly available on the website. So I think in preparing for this meeting and thinking about how the agency staff can best support the commission to meet its charge in these goals. As the commissioner said, I think the good news is that we are also deeply invested in these priorities and sort of the critical capacity building towards some of these goals. We also recognize it will take time and focus, and perhaps in some cases, additional capacity and resources to continue to be able to do so, and really look forward to engaging with all of you in discussions about, again, prioritizing and specific ways to move forward that would be important and helpful from where you sit. And I think just reflecting on sort of the structure of the commission, it seems important and hopefully helpful to make sure that the commission meetings moving forward are sort of both structured around some of the areas that I reviewed from the formal charge, and also paying attention to additional areas that commission members identify are relevant and sort of agree are important, to make sure that the work of this group is oriented towards progress on hopefully identifying and prioritizing actionable, both short and long-term recommendations, to best support the system, and again, make our work better and more helpful and more responsive to the field. So I'm going to just pause there for a minute. I think we will sort of get into a bunch of sort of, again, details about sort of both our current data sources as well as some of the more specific reporting requirements and how those sort of connect to current areas of focus and work that's underway at the agency. But I'm just going to pause briefly in case there's any questions about like the specific charge of the commission or the commission itself. And one of my jobs is to help make sure we're on time. So I am eager to sort of dive into the meat of the agenda, but also want to make sure there's time for any questions that might be top of mind right now.
Amy, this is JD. Just a question about the recommendation report. I know we're submitting it to folks in legislature, but who are the recommendations aimed at? Is it the department? Is it like, who are we making recommendations to?
So I think, you know, formally, the recommendations are to the legislature as sort of laid out here in the charge. But I think, you know, depending on the scope and focus of the recommendations in terms of like the audience and both who would be impacted by them, right, or who would need to be involved in implementing them, I think obviously like the recommendations themselves, again, I would assume would be to some extent directed at EEC in terms of how we can move forward, but potentially you know, even higher level or broader across agencies, again, depending on what the scope ends up being.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so Adrienne Murphy, our Senior Director of Data Analytics, is gonna go through an overview of what's happening at EEC.
Great. Thanks, Amy. So yeah, our team at EEC thought that to start, it might be helpful to ground the commission members with a very brief overview of what key data sources and systems we currently have and that we're currently leveraging to make to inform decision making. And then we'll talk a little bit about some other data work that's underway at the department to both help make that data more accessible and transparent to decision makers, and also other external facing data and research work. I'm just going to start by acknowledging that I have a hard time both monitoring the chat and presenting, so please feel free to put questions in the chat and I will make sure to stop periodically to check the chat, but also please feel free to raise your hand or even just hop off mute and ask questions, because we're going to go on a whirlwind tour over the next few minutes, and I want to make sure that I get questions answered as they come up. So I'll take on a little bit of a whirlwind tour about to get the lay of the land around EEC data sources. And I also want to emphasize that part of our goal and plan for future meetings is to go into various content areas in much more detail. So we'll sort of do a general lay of the land today, but we'll go into much more detail about data sources pertaining to particular topics in future meetings. Overall, the data that we collect here at EEC sort of falls into three key categories or user groups: data on our EEC programs, data on educators, and then data on children and families. In regard to programs, we have a wealth of data through our licensing education analytic database, or what we call LEAD. It has data on our licensed and funded early education and care programs, including the after school and out of school time programs, and our residential and placement programs. It includes sort of basic program data like location, capacity, etc., visit and investigation data, and really is our sort of key source of data about programs. We're really lucky that through the Commonwealth Cares for Children, or C3 program, that program has really been a game changer in the multiple ways that EEC is able to collect data, especially now that more than 90% of our licensed early education and after school and out of school time programs participate. And that program provides data on program enrollment, staffing, and compensation that we didn't have previously. And we're certainly grateful to the many practitioners, including many folks in this room, who take the time to provide us that data on a monthly basis. And then finally, we're in the early stages of piloting work with a small subset of programs to connect directly to their childcare management systems, or CCMS. We're thinking about this as a way to explore the feasibility of both increasing data quality and decreasing some duplicative reporting by being able to connect directly to data sources that programs use day to day. In the educator space, we have a professional qualifications registry that contains data on educators that have registered with EEC over time. Although we're currently working to replace this system with a more up-to-date and comprehensive educator portal. And then we also have data on individuals who undergo our background record check, or BRC process. And then finally, in the children and family space, we have a fairly detailed data on demographics and care received by children and families in our child care financial assistance or subsidy system, as well as data on children who are on the wait list for financial assistance. And then finally, we have a tool called CUSP that uses aggregate data from the US Census and combines that data with child level data from CCFA, and then also program data from LEAD and C3 to help us, and also some data from DESE to help us paint a sort of more integrated picture of the supply and demand for early education and care across the Commonwealth. And it allows us for some additional opportunities for data integration. And it also helps us do things like map childcare deserts, which I know came up during the introduction. This slide really only includes data that's housed here at EEC, but we also have access to a whole host of other resources, including the Commonwealth's new Early Childhood Integrated Data System, or EKIDS, which is supported through the work of the Interagency Education to Career Data Hub, and then allows us to look at how children are moving through the various state programs that serve children in the 0 to 5 years, including home visiting and WIC through CCFA, and then the public school system. My colleague Jessie, who I think we met a few minutes ago, is going to talk more about some other data system and IT developments that we're sort of are underway to help continue to build on these systems. And as I mentioned, we're going to go in much more detail about these systems and the data that they contain in future meetings. But I do want to pause because I think I've seen a couple of questions in the chat, and maybe some folks come off mute. So I'll pause for questions here before moving on.
Yeah, Adrian, I think I'm happy to address Laura's question at the end of the meeting, but I see a question from Amaris about if you could just clarify the difference, what the difference is between the PQR and CUSP, because it looks like it's the same description, which I think actually is a mistake.
Sorry, yeah, you answered it verbally, Adrian. Sorry.
Okay, got it.
I got ahead of the message, but I think, yeah, it looks like
just a copy and paste issue,
yeah.
which we can correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Perfect. So I think in the next few slides, Eugene, if you maybe want to move, awesome. I'm going to talk through a little bit about the new reporting requirements that Amy alluded to earlier. In the same statute that created the Data Advisory Commission, there's also a list of data elements that EEC is to annually report on moving forward to the extent feasible. And we'll walk through those data elements, and then for each element indicate whether it's something that EEC currently collects in its data systems, and then whether or not it's something that we report on publicly. Before I do that, though, I sort of want to start by noting that really EEC is committed to collecting as much data as feasible and appropriate to better understand the landscape of early education and care. and really to better serve and support children and families, educators, staff, and programs. And we want to collect this data to be able to understand the impact of investments and where resources are needed or should be reallocated to create a more effective and responsive system of early education and care. And we're also committed to increasing public transparency, making it easier for folks to access EEC data. We want to support researchers, practitioners, policymakers, advocates, and the general public in using EEC data to learn about what's working and not working and to inform policy decisions and program decisions. And I think my hope is as we walk through the next few slides, you'll see that we're already both collecting and reporting publicly on some of the data elements outlined in the statute. And in other areas, there's really considerable work ahead to meet this vision, and we're really excited to work with the Commission and other stakeholders to prioritize and to really help the agency think through next steps in making concrete progress as is feasible. So we're proud of the work that we've done, and we also recognize that there's a lot more work ahead, and we're excited to embark on that work alongside all of you. So overall, we'll walk through each of these and, thanks. We'll walk through each of these in more detail, but overall, the data falls into a couple of key buckets, and this is what the next few slides will sort of break down in more detail. Data on our licensed early education and care programs, data on the workforce, data on early education and care enrollment sort of writ large across the field, and then specifically data on enrollment in our child care financial assistance program, the financial operations of that program, as well as the data on children who are on the children and families on the wait list for that program. So before I dive in to each of these specifics, I want to also pause and make sure to check the chat and see if anyone has any questions. Great. Then Eugenia, maybe if you want to go to the next slide about so we'll start with early education and care programs and the workforce. As I mentioned, you can see from each of these slides, information on whether or not we collect each of these data elements, and then also the star to indicate whether or not it's something that we currently report on publicly. You'll see, for example, in the first early education and care program section, we collect data via C3 on programs, nonprofit and for-profit status. And we also collect private pay tuition information in LEAD and report it publicly in our childcare search. But our data doesn't currently collect, so data systems don't currently collect data on which programs operate outside of Massachusetts. And we are fortunate that we currently collect and report publicly on almost all of the workforce metrics specified in the new statute, with the exception of full-time, part-time status, which we collect data on via C3, but we collect the data as full-time equivalents rather than in part-time, full-time status, which really having all of this rich workforce data from C3 puts us ahead of many of our peers across the country. I think it is worth noting here that we collect all of this information via C3 at the aggregate program level. So we know how many FTEs a program employs. We know the highest and lowest wages paid to educators at the program level. But since we don't collect this data directly from educators at the educator level, we're somewhat more limited in how we can use these data to answer questions about the workforce. For example, we can't answer questions about how folks move through, folks in the workforce move across programs or how they move across roles in a program. But we're really excited, and I'm excited for Jesse to share in a little bit about the vision for the new educator portal, which will help us to really answer more granular questions here in the workforce space. Eugenia, you want to move on to the enrollment slide? Great. So when it comes to child enrollment, we're fortunate to have the ability through C3 to collect the number of children enrolled overall by program in total and by age group, which is information that we didn't have previous to C3 and many other states don't have. But because programs report this data in the aggregate, we don't have insight through EEC data into demographics or other socioeconomic indicators for children enrolled in early education and care statewide outside of the child care financial assistance system. We've taken some steps in our C3 surveys to understand the extent to which programs collect this data about children in their programs. But we really here rely largely on other extant data sources outside of EEC and community data to be able to understand enrollment and in early education and care programs outside of CCFA. And then, Eugene, if you want to move to the next slide. When it comes to our child care financial assistance or CCFA program, we do collect data on most of the indicators outlined, the new reporting requirements, the indicators outlined in statute around CCFA and the waitlist for child care financial assistance. We're excited. It sounds like many folks on this call have checked out our public dashboards, but we're excited to now report publicly on our CCFA caseload by region, age group, and funding source. I'll talk more about those dashboards in just a moment. I do think it's worth noting that there's a fair amount of missingness in our CCFA and kinder weight data, especially in the demographic space, which is something that we hope to address as we continue to build out and strengthen our IT systems in these areas. I recognize this is a little bit of a whirlwind tour of our EEC data sources and a whirlwind tour of the new reporting requirements. But I think our hope is that it gives you a little bit of a baseline for the types of data that we currently have and types of data that we currently don't have, and the types of questions that data enables us to answer, and in some cases doesn't enable us to answer. So I'm happy to pause here because I think I've seen a few questions pop up in the chat, and then I'll turn it over back to Amy.
Yeah, and I see there's a question about country of origin, which I think was listed as one of the hopes for something that we might be able to report, at least in terms of moving forward, and then some feedback that may be sort of chilling or, concerning to enrollment of families. And I think, as you can see on this slide, so it's helpful to sort of see what we are currently collecting, and then other things that were sort of specified that I think, again, look forward to as we go through, especially meetings where we're sort of doing deeper dives into some of these areas, thinking about prioritization, also thinking about feedback on things that maybe feel less helpful or important to be focusing on as we try to sort of stage thinking about what additional data would be collected moving forward.
Yeah, this is Emily. I can just add to what I said there, which is, there's been pressure by this presidential administration in the past to suggest to families that Head Start is covered by the public charge rule and that they'll lose access to citizenship if they enroll their children in our program. That is not currently true, but we've moved away from asking anything about immigration or refugee status when families are enrolling, and asking where were you born, where was your child born, could discourage families from participating in the program.
I think that's great feedback. I do believe there's a requirement for the child, not the parents, that the child has documentation. And so whether they were born here or elsewhere. So I believe these, just to be explicit, are all about the child because of that federal reimbursement for certain funds. But I will just echo that we understand that, data is powerful, both in a good way and can be weaponized. And so we are trying to be very cognizant about how, when, and why we are collecting certain pieces of information.
Yeah, I will want to call out, this is sort of beyond the scope at the moment, but if down the road we're thinking about aligning various enrollment data collection systems, CPPI aligns the data that's collected on children with what the districts ask for. And I do believe city of birth is a typical data field. And I don't know whether that's changing right now, but that is also something to think about and pay attention to.
I think they took it out for this year because I no longer have to look at birth certificates and write it.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think there's going to be opportunities to come back to these specifics, both today at the end, but also again, as we sort of go deeper into particular areas. And I see a comment from JD about sort of the tracks to the work in terms of thinking about systems to collect data not already collected, and yes, to also think about the application of the data, which actually leads into something I'll talk about just in terms of sort of priority areas, JD, and tracks in terms of some ways of thinking about what those are. Before we move on, though, I see Patrick has a question about ways to connect with DESI data collection efforts. And yes, I think to some of the comments that were just made by Jesse and Jocelyn, but also more broadly, we are thinking about ways to both connect and integrate with other agencies across the state as is possible and makes sense. So that should be part of the thinking as well. Harold and Paula.
Yes. I'm looking at all these data points, and this is great, but I don't see a lot of details on the educators part, meaning on the workforce. If you, what is your primary languages? If you speak more than, other than English or something like that, where's your country of origin? I don't know if that's really relevant or not, but especially the language is very important, because now we know what kind of training and in what language and do you need to present this. So I think somewhere here you should include that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really important point. Thank you. And again, as Jesse will talk about, as we also think through new systems that we're developing, what is really important to make sure is included there, and understanding also why, the why is helpful because it helps make the case for that. So I think if we could move along, I know we have a lot to cover in our ambitious way. I think we did think it would be sort of helpful to, as a sort of organizing structure to start with in terms of just sharing some of the ways we're thinking about the different areas and priorities that we're focused on, and again, would really appreciate input and perspective on in the meetings ahead. I think, first of all, just really, again, sort of identifying both what we want to know and sort of what the key questions of interest are, and building intentional capacity, both within the agency and externally where needed, to, again, collect data, conduct analysis, answer questions. We'll talk a little bit more in a minute, and some of you may be aware that we did, as an agency, develop and publish a formal research agenda for the agency, which is sort of a first step in articulating some of the questions that we have heard, both internally and externally, our priorities, and look forward to again continuing to refine that, as well as again learning more as we are doing all the time about other research that's happening in the field, and again identifying ways we can work with external research partners where needed as an agency on some key projects moving forward that are aligned with answering, again, some of the most important questions to the field. I think as we've been talking about, sort of identifying additional data needs, so we know there's gaps in our systems. We've sort of acknowledged C3 has been such an incredible vehicle for data collection, and we're continuously trying to leverage that to help collect key data as appropriate, but we also recognize there are data needs that will not be, and maybe should not be, fulfilled through C3 moving forward. That isn't necessarily the long-term solution for some of the data we want to collect, as Harold and you just said, in particular about the workforce, and likely about children and families served by our programs as well, and in other areas. Jesse's going to talk next again. We're really building this up, Jesse, about sort of the work to modernize our technology systems, which is an important focus area, in particular right now, really thinking about families and educators to start with. I know our team is really committed to and always thinking about how to improve the quality of the data we have alongside our product team, Jesse's team, which is, helping to inform updates that we can make right now, where is possible to our current systems. And also as we hear from folks, again, on the other end who are interacting with our data systems or, again, answering questions we ask through surveys, ways we can make sure we're asking for things in ways that will get the best information and most consistent information possible, because data doesn't mean very much if we have a lot of it that's missing and we're not sure why, or if the data we have, don't seem reliable or valid, because again, there's either confusion or ways that we can be more clear or thoughtful. And I think as Adrian was talking about, we're really proud, but also always thinking about how to do more in terms of expanding public access to data. Again, we have now public dashboards and downloadable data files in a way that we didn't used to. We've been trying to make sure all of our presentations are informed by data at public meetings, putting more reports on our website more consistently, hoping to develop some new data and research briefs ourselves to just lift up the data and make it hopefully clear and accessible to folks who can use it in a variety of ways. Again, really hope that EEC can continue to be an important source of truth for research and data, particularly in the months and years ahead. So just wanted to go through sort of what some of our, again, this is all informing our day-to-day work already, but also just in terms of future directions, wanting to pay attention to those different areas in terms of input from the commission. So Jesse, without further ado, I'm going to turn it to you, unless I'm just to, give us a quick overview of what are we doing in terms of data system modernization.
Yeah, so thank you, Amy. And yes, big buildup. I will preface this with, we're just doing kind of a taste today, and we'll be doing a deeper dive, I think, at the next meeting on some of this work. But we're really digging into a lot of, IT modernization work. What does that actually mean? We want to make the user experience better for both our staff, but really the constituents that we're serving, the families, the educators, the programs. We want to make sure that we're thinking about how we serve our residents in the ways that they actually are used to. So, can we access things on mobile phones? Can I get this in my preferred language instead of everything being in English? Can I get text message notifications? And we know that, most of the time people don't really want to interact with the government. They interact with the government because they have to. And so can we make the experience as low an administrative burden as possible for them? I saw in the chat there was some talk about, Part B, thinking about, hey, the government maybe already has some data in this other agency. So long-term, thinking about, if you already have a profile, if we already have your license, do we have to ask for it again? But the way we're starting off, and I'll try to focus this a little bit on the name of the game here, which is data. So we're digging into this family portal for childcare financial assistance and an educator portal. And so when Adrian went over the various systems earlier in the slide presentation, you may have seen that we had several systems related to childcare financial assistance. So we had Kinderwait, which manages the wait list. We have FACS that helps the CCR&Rs manage the actual cases and review applications for eligibility. We don't actually have a current system for families to really authentically online apply for childcare financial assistance, which hamstrings us in a couple of ways. One, it just, it's not mobile optimized. A lot of that data doesn't get into structured fields later. And it means, it's not easy to save it and come back to it in a way that you would expect if you were going and applying online for, you know, something else that isn't government related. And then we have our billing and payment system. So we're keeping our billing and payment system, though we're updating that in additional ways, really to help streamline the payment process and move towards prospective payments. But the rest of these we're trying to combine into one family portal and case management system. From a data perspective, that's going to make analysis a lot easier, because instead of trying to join data points from this system to this system to this system and, you know, add up all the times and things like that, just to answer one simple question of how long did it take between a family joining the wait list and getting care. We'll have the families on one kind of through line through one system, which we're excited to work closely with the data analytics team to really think about how to make that optimized to answer questions that we want to answer, both from the perspective of analyzing, you know, the software and the experience there, but also analyzing the program and what's effective. So we got a good deal of capital funding here, but we're hoping to get a first version out this fall with kind of basic capabilities for applying, adding yourself to the wait list, getting updates there, and having our CCR and our partners and Mass 211 be able to actually do their workflows on the back end. If we keep going, I'll talk about the educator portal as well, and then answer any questions. One of the reasons why we're trying to do the educator portal at the same time is we're really trying to align as much as we can, both on kind of the code end, make sure things are maintainable in the long run, make sure certain patterns are used, but also thinking about where there are opportunities to not reinvent the wheel. I think there are a lot of places where we have either no data or we have kind of fragmented data on educators. So we may know who has a certification, but we may not know if they're currently employed, or we may know in a different system who's been background checked, but we don't know, again, if they're currently employed or if they've left, and the program just hasn't removed them yet. But we're also working with the program side here, who's really rethinking what it means to say, you know, you're a qualified educator, and here's a career progression for you through the development of a new credential, which I believe Jocelyn will go into in the future. But we want to build out this educator portal to have one spot where the educator is getting benefit in being able to apply for a credential, pull that up for future employers, and have information on what that career trajectory looks like in terms of where you go, how you level up, and what could be next. I think there are a lot of opportunities between these two, as well as we think about, you know, educators potentially being able to then apply for childcare financial assistance with it automatically flagging them as an EC. But I, sorry, got distracted by the comment quick, but really we want educators to see themselves as building a career in early education. And we want to be able to track what that career progression looks like. and build a portal that serves their needs in that way. And to earlier points, collects information on what our workforce actually looks like. So I see a comment here based upon our family's experience with state developed portals. May I please suggest that the portal for families creates transparency for the process for both the state and the family is not a black hole once you apply. I totally hear that feedback. Prior to coming to EEC, I was actually at the Department of Family Medical Leave, and we saw that a huge number of phone calls to our contact system or contact center were just asking for, what's the latest? Has anyone actually reviewed my application yet? And so we built in functionality to say, here's, your application is now being reviewed, or we need this document, resubmitted because the scan was blurry, et cetera, and have really clear information both on where it is in the process and what the outcome is and why. And so we know that's going to be feedback that's coming, and we might as well plan for it from the beginning, because no one ever likes having having that black hole experience. Kate, I see your hand is up. I think I can get one more comment, and then we'll probably have to.
Sorry, I didn't know when the interactive part started, so I can shut up if you want. I was just going to say on the portal for educators, I think if I could just emphasize that we have a workforce that is not technology savvy, so the simplest of mobile interfaces is the only viable option of whatever we create for them to make it useful.
Yeah, that is great feedback. I know we're behind, so I'm gonna say one quick sentence and then hand it back to Amy Checkaway. One of the things that I've really tried to emphasize with my team is that we need to meet people where they are instead of expecting people to meet us at some arbitrary line. We need to recognize that not everyone is comfortable with technology. Not everyone has, Wi-Fi in their home. Not everyone speaks English at a certain level. Not everyone has a laptop. And so we really want to think through all of these and make a simplified experience that gets people through the process as easily as possible. So I know we're past time though, so I will hand it off to Amy, and happy to dig in with folks on anything later.
The interactive part starts in 30 seconds. So I'm gonna actually skip these. I think again, the slides will be available. There's hyperlinks within the slides, and we're gonna actually go into more detail about some of these again as part of really focused discussions at future meetings. And I think again, we have more information on our website, and there's already been some links in the chat, but want to get to the point where we can hear more from all of you, so we can continue on. I think before we had a few questions, and then I'm sure folks here both have questions and comments that you've either saved up or that you brought here or that are going to come to mind then. But I think before we did that, just wanted to share some thinking about logistics. If you just keep going, Eugenia, thank you. We're going to propose quarterly meetings for the commission. I think to the question earlier, this commission is in place now for multiple years. It's not just for this year. And I think that the work is longer term in nature, and some of it again will really benefit from short-term focus and prioritization and recommendations again on an annual basis. And so our thinking, and again open to comments as part of the larger discussion, is to meet quarterly and make sure to that there are at least 2 additional meetings before the end of the calendar year, during which we would sort of both focus on one or more of the sort of areas sort of as organized by our strategic priorities. Again, do less sharing in terms of the amount of time that we did today, but just sort of a reminder of the data we have, what we're currently tracking. Again, we could focus more on the family portal in one meeting, on the educator portal in another, in terms of but more in a discussion way, to sort of bring information about where we're at and also get feedback and suggestions for that. I think point to any sort of relevant, timely research, both within the agency as well as outside, that would be informative, again, for sort of thinking about the commission's, what information would be helpful, but also to inform recommendations that the commission might want to make. And then again, sort of organizing both by the charge of the commission, but some of the sort of priority focus areas. I think that we could both sort of do a combination of bringing forward some of our ideas and potential options for, again, priorities from where we sit, but also structure the conversations about getting input from all of you, and then hopefully reaching consensus so that the commission can collectively, and I think EEC can take the lead on some of the preparation on preparing a report that would include both the, a summary of the discussions and conversations that have happened, as well as forward-looking recommendations in time for December. So just wanted to tee that up. I think if we go to the next slide, and then we can, I think, put these questions also in the chat and probably take down the deck so we can see each other a little bit better. I think really wanted to sort of do a pulse check on where folks are after hearing all of that we shared with you today, but also, wanting to know if you came to the meeting today, or if, again, the meeting sort of prompted suggestions in terms of what you hope the commission will prioritize. Again, thinking about first this year, but also beyond is fine. As well as if there's additional specific information that would be most helpful for us to share with you, so we can prepare. Again, thinking about potentially having our next meeting focused on the family space, if that makes sense to folks. But really, again, want to know what topics you would want to be sure to cover. And then our thinking is to also sort of submit an initial, more really of a progress report to the legislature, since this was formed as part of the fiscal year 25 budget. In the very short term, that would just include really a status update, if that sounds right to you, about this formation of the commission, the membership of the commission, and then a summary of the first meeting. We would just plan to do that almost more for housekeeping, but wanted to make sure that if there's anything else that you would want us to include in an initial report that we might submit again in the near future. And then again, the real work is going to be towards this first more substantive report by December 1st. So that was a lot of words. And I'm going to open it up to get conversation. Again, I think folks can start, given where we are in time, with any of the questions. But again, really want to hear about priorities, areas that you want this commission to focus on, and any suggestions about process and structure as well. And Laura, you're ready to go.
All right, just one, I guess, process and housekeeping question is, so I know you talked about an interim report just to let folks know the commission had started, and then the first official report to the legislature is December 1st. So what that basically means is we would have had 3 meetings of the commission before, and this is really an organizing meeting, so 2 substance meetings before the report goes in.
Yes, I think we've been trying to balance, like, that the commission is not just for this year. Hopefully this is a multi-year effort, recognizing sort of out of respect for folks' times, and also somewhat wanting to also bring into these conversations, again, input that we're getting also from other advisory spaces and folks as well, but open to feedback on that, if that, again, feels right to all of you, or if you have worries about that cadence and intensity, again, given where you sit. I think we want to we want the work to move and again, to sort of make sure that we're making progress and also just sort of want to balance with everything else we know people have happening. So.
Yeah, fair enough. And I know it's a lot to juggle. I'll just very quickly put my more content-oriented question.
Yeah, please.
And Adrian did start to allude to this, but I think and this may be for future work. So your answer was very reasonable, Amy, given when the commission got started and the fact that this is multi-year. I think my question is how we can look at data around family demand, whether that is the wait list. I know that's not universal demand, but the wait list or other sources of family demand with where capacity exists and how we understand not just where the childcare deserts are, but changes to supply and family access and how they might be triggered by conditions in the environment, by funding levels, by the new contract, by other external forces. So that seems to me to be a really rich place where we need to apply the data we have as opposed to just gather it.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense, Laura. And one of the reasons we were thinking about starting in the family space for the next meeting is I think that's an area both where we would really like to share more with you about some of what we're seeing, but also have more discussion about that again in a space like this where we can think about sort of helping to make meaning of it and also think about what data and information is missing from this story. So appreciate that. Other questions, comments, priorities, feedback?
Just adding to, I totally agree with Laura. And just one thing to add to that is more information about what kind of care families actually want is also, I think, really important to painting that picture. Yeah. And just a response to question 2 about more information, it would be really helpful to know what are the data sharing agreements the EEC has in place with other agencies and providers and so on, just to get a full sense of like, that was such a helpful overview of the data sources that you manage. And it would be really nice to see what the realm of possibility is beyond that too.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I can chime in. So I think a couple things I'm thinking about. One is building off of what Ellen just asked about the data sharing agreements is in other spaces where I see so many of our friends on the screen, conversations have been happening very specifically about things like DCF caseloads. So understanding those data sharing agreements and how we understand some of the intersectionality with things like the DCF caseloads. Also, I think for me, I shared earlier, one of my favorite data points around workforce and really just thinking about how we better understand workforce from a qualitative and quantitative perspective without it feeling extractive or overburdening our providers. And so kind of thinking about that from almost like a community-based participatory perspective, because from where we sit at Jumpstart, we have some interaction with our preschool partners, but would really love to hear from our preschool partners. What type of data would you like to see from the community of early education providers? So really letting the sector lead on the data that they want collected about their workforce. And then last but not least, the other thing we think deeply about at Jumpstart is early literacy and some of the tools that we use and some of the data that we collect. So TOEFL, the test of preschool early literacy, and then a partnership that we have with Lena, which is like the little talk pedometer that the children wear that assesses language and environment. So just curious if there are spaces in the future, and again, really led by the sector, to think about, are there innovative ways of kind of assessing what's happening in classrooms that can then help drive things like the literacy launch partnership and other things intersectionally that are happening in the state. So just a few thoughts that I've had after this really robust conversation. So thanks everybody.
No, thank you, Kate. I think you raised an important point, right, about not, what do we know about sort of how kids are doing and what their experiences are. And all the other things. I just wanted to +1 that in particular. Kate, go right ahead.
I guess I'd be really interested in us doing a little bit more work as it relates to early intervention and tracking not only how many referrals are getting made, but how many actual children are receiving the services. And I think there's a large gap between one and the other. And I think as a sector, it is our responsibility to try and make sure that these children we're serving, which we know are the most at-risk children, are getting access to the services that they rightfully need and frankly are owed by this state and all of us. And I'm not sure it's our strength as a sector. And we see it a lot as it relates to children in shelter. So that's one of my other hot buttons. So maybe we could track more of that.
Thank you. I'm going to assume that no comments are agreement about the short-term progress report, that sounds reasonable. I'm also looking at the chat to make sure I haven't missed anything here. We're going to make sure, obviously, we're taking minutes and careful notes, again, to help inform sort of our future conversations, but also will reflect what's in the chat as well in
Yeah,
terms of some of the specifics.
can I reply to
Of
Harold's
course.
comment really quick? So I saw there was a question around, sometimes folks needing an SSN for specific
Yes.
purposes.
Yeah.
So I think that this is something that we need to look at broadly. There was at least one of our technical systems where I asked, hey, is it policy that folks need a social security number to get this, particular thing? And the lawyers came back to me and said, no, it turns out the developers just put that in because it was an easier way to uniquely identify a person.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
I think we want to make sure that all of those points that's driven by the actual policy. And, if there are places where we do need a social security number, can we get away with also asking for a social or an ITIN or a social or a license, those sorts of things, making sure we're aligned with the policy first and foremost, and not doing anything just because it was technically easier.
Okay. I know sometimes it's also part of the budget. I mean, it's how many people can you fit in this group, because this is how much money do I have allocated for this training and all that. And then if you don't have all the documentation, if you don't have your social security and all your things, you're not able to not even apply or anything like that. And then we know that colleges like Urban College had a list of 400 people waiting for have access to this type of training, but it's because those 400 people weren't in the category of not having a social security, not able to complete the FATSA, and they have to wait for other resources from a different bucket of funding to be able to pay for that. So I just want to point that out because it's something that in our community at Latino we see a lot. Our people are not able to access resources because of this issue.
I feel like I saw somebody with their hand up, but maybe it went down.
Yeah, Amaris, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to add a response to the progress report. I may be off base here, but I'm wondering if part of the legislative charge was a reaction to like they just aren't aware of how the current data is being used. And so I was just going to suggest that like part of that report might be making a more explicit connection between that great slide of the data sources that exist and also like a more explicit example of how it is currently being used to inform work policy, et cetera. That's all.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, and I think speaks to, in addition to obviously talking about the commission and and what has happened so far, just providing some context as we did today, and especially in specific areas so that they're aware of everything that's happening, both in terms of, and I really appreciate also the questions, comments, and then things in the chat about, again, really important not to just focus on what data we're collecting, and again, trying to be responsible and respectful about that, and also about really focusing on using the data and how we're using it and how we can even use it better. So and agree that hearing the I think agreement to focus in the family space as well as the workforce as everything's a priority, but especially those ones potentially rising to the top in terms of areas commission members would like to focus. So thank you. And thank you for bearing with all of our talking today. I'm always really conscious of that. And again, look forward to balancing that in future meetings with, again, more time for conversation. And we'll be sure to try to get out materials and agendas early so that folks can also have a chance to think about things in advance. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Chair Kershaw, maybe to close us out and adjourn the meeting for today.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Checkaway. I will be brief since we're on our way out, just to thank you all very much and just add my 2 cents on the reporting. I feel very strongly that the work of this commission is the most important thing, and that those reports can reflect wherever we are in our process, so not the other way around. So we will do our work. You will help us set the agenda and the priorities. We will continue to update you on our own progress, on new systems, on new access to data. And as we hit those legislative milestones on reporting, it will reflect the work we've done to date. So that is our commitment, to keep the work focused on you and the work the agency's been doing, and we will keep the legislature up to date. I think you're right, Amherst, that I think there's a lot, and just sharing the KPIs and others with our advisory councils and others, I think people aren't aware of how much data we are now able to collect and share. And so making sure the legislature starts with that will be terrific. So thank you so much for your partnership, for being willing to hang in there with us, and for the work ahead together. We're looking forward to it. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.